Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining me, as always, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Brian, how are you doing on this lovely day?
I got a feeling, and I feel good.
I see what you're doing there. Is it kind of like one of those Pittsburgh's going to the Super Bowl? Maybe it's too early for that yet, right?
I can't finish my sentence because that's just over the top. That's an overreaction, but I got a feeling.
It's a good feeling. You know what? I was already starting to chip away on my studs and duds article, and there wasn't very many duds. There was like hardly anything in the dud category. I think I'm going to have like two, and one's probably a very easy guess. And I really kick myself and hate myself to put him in the dud category constantly. We'll talk about that, but it's been consistent, for the preseason, and it's unfortunate concerning the player that we'll bring up here in a moment. Then I had another one, and I'll see if you had kind of the same thoughts. But for overall, everything looked pretty sharp for what we can make out on TV.
Yeah, especially that particular. See, way to ruin my feeling, reminding me of that damn Skycam.
I think that, is it just me, or did hashtag Skycam overtake hashtag the refs stink, last night? Because I don't know. It may have seemed a little, I was a little overboard on it. I may have sent no less than a dozen tweets about the Skycam. It was so ridiculous. First things first, for anyone who's seen the movie Zoolander, I think that was the first thing I put up was a photo of like Ben Stiller in the role of Zoolander. I said, what is this, football game for ants? Like the tickets, I could get a load seat in Nashville. I was looking because I nearly went just for the heck of it, you know what I mean? I was like, I could go sit in the loge, and I mean, I know it's just a preseason game, and had I went, that would have been a very prudent decision because of the rain and the weather. But $40. I could have sat in a freaking suite for $40. So you think about this, what the upper level seats cost, maybe $5 or so, and if you threw in, if you slipped an extra George Washington or two to maybe one of the custodians, you would have had a better view than NBC was giving us. It's amazing.
Yeah, the combination, and I tweeted this last night, the combination of Skycam and Chris Collinsworth, it was almost more than I could take, even for watching the Steelers game. It was just, it was terrible. And yes, the refs stink, and the Skycam stinks, and Chris Collinsworth stinks.
Terry loves Chris Collinsworth. She says he's very knowledgeable, and I'm just like,
yeah.
he has his moments. I don't think he's grating at times, and he's definitely a Steelers hater. But I will say on the flip side of it, he has his moments. He's not quite Phil Simms. I mean, Phil Simms used to drive me absolutely up a wall, and nobody's Tony Romo right now. But Tony Romo's young, and he has yet to be corrupted by this.
Yeah.
What do you want to say, like the announcing teams or whatever?
I lost my any small bit of empathy or acceptance of Chris Collinsworth when he implied that Dan McCullers had done enough to potentially take the starting job from Javon Hargrave because Hargrave's in a contract year, and I just well,
I mean,
he knows stuff that's not right.
Well, he talked about all the young receivers, and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, well, let me see, who's all been here before? Juju? Yeah. Eli? Yeah. Ryan Switzer, who did start out the game with the first team. Vance McDonald? Yeah. Xavier Grimble? Yeah. James Conner? Yeah. Jalen Samuels? Yeah. I get it. Dante Moncrief, but he's not Dante Moncrief on the older end of what is he, like 25? I know Eli Rogers is the oldest. I think he's 25 or 26. Dante Moncrief is still very young for how many years he has under his belt in the NFL. Very much like, Juju. He was very young when he came into the league. So I get that. But you know what? He's like a 5-year, this is his 6th year in the NFL, and he's a 5-year veteran. I mean, come on, that's not really a young guy. So who are we really talking about here? We're talking about Deontay Johnson, who was just drafted, duh, and James Washington, a second-year player, okay, and that's it. I mean, I get the other guys that are there, like for camp and preseason and whatnot, but every single team has that. Now, that one kind of was the one that bothered me more or less. I mean, I get it. They got to follow all 32 teams, and I mean, it's really, why we have a job, to be completely honest, is because we talk Steelers pretty much 24/7. We're real ingrained in the process, follow the team very closely, have our sources and whatnot. These guys are like on a national level, and they have like a cursory knowledge sometimes, and they're pulling things off a sheet or gathering some things, which, we get in trouble with that every now and then too, when it's like, okay, for example, you know what I mean? How much do we really know about maybe the Arizona Cardinals or the Seahawks or something? You know what I mean? I haven't done my homework that much on those teams just yet. I'll do that when we get around, to week 2 for the Seahawks when they come to Heinz Field. So, I mean, those kind of things. There's teams, that the Steelers play every year. Obviously, I have a pretty intimate knowledge of most of the AFC North, particularly the Cleveland Browns in my situation. And having friends and family that, are always, that's the most annoying thing, is being at any type of function, particularly this spring and summer, with the moves that the Browns have made. And I'm always getting asked my opinions of what I think about the Browns, and they don't like my opinion about the Browns. Go figure. It's just like they want to, puff their chest out and, bang the drum already. And I'm just kind of like, hey, we got some games to play. And, as obvious by the preseason game, it's still preseason. It's so hard to gauge just anything. The Steelers looked incredibly sharp. The Browns didn't, on offense did not look so sharp. And it's just, they had this guy sitting out and this guy sitting out. And it's like, well, I get some of that. But, there's some of the decision makers in the game, most notably like Baker Mayfield, if I want to single anybody out, that didn't, particularly. Well, I'm gonna throw something out here right now, since I'm throwing some shade at the Cleveland Browns, Brian. Who had, and I guess I'll bring it up because we already mentioned the sky cam and how I couldn't even tell who the offensive line starters were or anything. You couldn't see any of the numbers. You could barely see. I guess the only good thing of it was, if you were sitting in the stadium, you kind of have a good idea of how many yards somebody gains. It isn't like some wacky camera angle, but it's almost like I need, like, instead of like HD or 4K TV, I needed like 40K TV in order to enlarge this and see what was going on. But obviously, we were talking about, I was mentioning studs and duds, and Josh Dobbs. I think it's pretty obvious who I was talking about there, as far as who had a good game and who didn't really shine Sunday night. So I'm gonna throw this hypothetical question out at you. Who had a better quarterback rating in this third week of the preseason, Baker Mayfield or Josh Dobbs?
I will freely admit to being ignorant of this, but I'm going to guess, based on your question and the shade being thrown, that it was Josh Dobbs.
No. Josh Dobbs ended with a 36.1, 4-9, 79 yards. He had the pick, which was, tipped, and this is a tough one because he overthrows Zach Gentry on what I thought was, if he throws him a nice easy ball right there, I think Gentry pretty much almost walks in for a touchdown there. And then we have a completely different thought of Dobbs, and then he had like a really like laser beam in the middle of the field. I believe that was Gentry as well, and it was like Gentry didn't know what was coming his way. It was wet, there was elements, I get it, balls tipped, either or there. And a lot of people were making the same comments about Mason Rudolph and his interception as to whether or not, I believe it was James Washington, whether he ran the wrong route or something like that, or the ball slipped or something of that nature. We can get in that a little bit more. But anyways, 36-1 is the QB rating for Josh Dobbs, which, just isn't going to cut it. Baker Mayfield, 30.6. Threw for less yards, didn't throw for any touchdowns, 10-26, and I believe he played the entire first half. And of course, he's playing with pretty much the first team. You know what I mean? He's the starter there, and it was just that was kind of an interesting game. And I know some people are going to tune in from other things, or people are like, "Why are you talking about Cleveland?" And it was just, it's kind of just. It's fresh in my head because of all the things that were said on last night's game by Chris Collinsworth and saying, the Steelers have a chip on their shoulder and everything like this. And when I get people asking me about other teams in particular, and, they're talking about, the Browns or something like that, it was like, that's exactly my take. This was the dress rehearsal. And I get, there's final scores and things. By the way, Cleveland actually did lose the preseason game. Not that the final score matters because of all the different, combinations of first and fourth teams and things and that, people sitting out and things of that nature. The score really doesn't matter in the end, but we're talking about, we're looking at people who are leading sustainable type of drives. Ben Roethlisberger looking very sharp for the most part, but even it took him like a couple drives. There were some drops and things of that nature again, and you're going through a little bit of growing pains. But this is where I felt the Steelers looked overall pretty much very sharp in this game, and then some of the other teams that I watch as I flip around, particularly that game in Winnipeg where they played on an 80-yard field, Green Bay and Oakland. If you didn't see that, just look that one up on the internet. Very bizarre. They had to shorten the field up in Canada where they played. For some reason, the Raiders played a home preseason game in Canada, but aside from the point, that one was goofed. There was all kind of wacky things going on. Trace McSorley looking like, the second coming for the he looked like a savior. You want to talk about somebody, he went 19, 28, 203, 2 touchdowns, 112.6 rating over there, and we were kind of cackling about Trace McSorley because we follow Big Ten kind of closely, and so we're looking around the AFC North, and it's just kind of like one of those things where, okay, some of these teams look like they got their stuff together, some teams don't. I think the Steelers definitely did, though, on Sunday.
Yeah, the initial couple series is kind of what you would expect for a group of people who have really only practiced together, haven't done any game, had any game time. They looked a little bit, I don't want to say out of sync because that's not true. It wasn't as crisp as it could be, but it didn't take them long. They made, I think they had a nice first down on James Conner, looked good. Ben looked fine. I didn't have an issue with pretty much anything Ben really did. I thought he was reading things well. I thought he was picking the right receivers. It didn't look like in my mind, didn't look like he was focusing on any one person, although they tried to say that, in any big game, any big clutch issue that he's always going to go to Juju. I don't know that that's the case, but and then by the time they got around to that third drive, which was the last drive the starters played, at least on offense, everything kind of clicked. They went right down the field and had a really nice touchdown to Juju. I was very encouraged by what I saw. I think that they focused on one aspect of the game until they got in the red zone, which was keeping these short passes going, which I think is something Randy Fichtner wants to do. Get the ball out of Ben's hand quick, avoid him getting hit. Even though he basically said that's why he wants to play. He wants to play this game because he wants to get hit. He wanted to get hit for the first time, so he remembers what it feels like.
Whatever, man.
Yeah, if that's what you want to do, it's good. I'd rather you don't. I'd rather you don't have that memory at all this year and you forget about it completely. That's not going to happen. But they look pretty good. I guess you said I was encouraged by what I saw. I'm a little concerned with some of the drops. You've got a couple guys who just, and I mean, I hate to pick the Vanimal out, but this is, essentially last game he had a catch and a fumble. In this game, he's got 2 targets and no receptions. That's not what I expect. And that's certainly not what I think we'll get as time comes along. But, that's a mild concern. Overall, like I said, pretty happy. I thought, like I said, I was pleased to see James Conner look like James Conner. I thought Jalen Samuels looked better this year in some plays. Unfortunately, he got the slippery feet on the 2-point conversion there. But it was a good showing on the offensive side, and it continued. Not that I'm going to push this ahead or anything, but it continued for that first drive that Mason Rudolph was in with the nice long pass to guess who? James Washington for another touchdown. It was it was a good game. It was a good game.
Oh, how often are preseason games that enjoyable? Now I get by the time it was the fourth quarter, I think part of it is the crowd. Like the place is emptied out. It was, raining and everything. It was probably intolerable to sit and watch, third, fourth string guys or whatever. I felt a little bad that Duck Hodges didn't get in there, Duck Dynasty there, but it is what it is, and there's a lot to be made. I think the biggest thing that's going to be said is it's going to be this whole quarterback deal. And I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like I was backpedaling because I think Mason Rudolph has looked sharp. I've said that in many other shows, but I was also pumping my brakes. And part of that was that big play to James Washington, that touchdown, as you just said. That was incredible. I mean, this is what we've seen these guys do like all summer. Both of them, to be completely honest, especially James Washington, no matter who he's with, and we kind of have that expectation because they played together in college and hooked up however many times that they should have that rapport as well. I think one of the things is though, I think Collinsworth actually hit the nail on the head, and he hit it one way, and then he had to straighten it out with the hammer because then he whacked it and hit his thumb. He had half of it right. He was talking about how difficult the decision is to make between Dobbs and Rudolph, right? As far as who may be the backup, and it's because Rudolph probably more emulates Ben Roethlisberger. We've heard this kind of thing before with quarterbacks and timing and things of that nature. And the Steelers may actually, I don't think it's game planning and it's oh, well, you know what? We're going to throw Josh Dobbs in there. Ben got hurt. You can't really game plan for Dobbs. He's a completely different quarterback. It's not game planning the same way for Ben as you would with Rudolph. Well, that's kind of dumb because you just throw your own team under the bus doing that. Yeah. Because I think that's the problem we're seeing with Dobbs right now is being a little out of sync with some of these guys is more or less that reason is because he is a different type of quarterback. I still feel like he's holding on to the ball for a long period of time for whatever reason. He makes plays with his feet that's real nice, but there's a lot of times where I think he's unnecessarily this was Ben. Remember when Todd Haley came in and he said he basically planted him like a tree, don't move, stay in the pocket. Yeah. And Ben became a pocket passer. Ben was very mobile, but a lot of that was this is like playing backyard football, and some of it's erratic, and I think that's what kind of contributed maybe to the interception as well. It's just, I don't know, it just something seems off with it. It doesn't feel like the same Josh Dobbs of last preseason where he went and took the job, put his foot on the neck of the backup quarterback position and just took control, led all these drives, very poised. I think he's still a leader. And the reason I want to bring all these things up, and let me go back to Rudolph real quick as well. He threw that big pass. Everyone gets excited. Big flashy plays. It was 2 plays for the whole drive, and then he had the interception, and there wasn't really much of anything else generated. So it's sometimes I have to pump my brakes. But what was it 66.7? I got it here somewhere. Let me find it. 66.7% completion percentage for Mason Rudolph. This guy has been completing, I don't have the full overall preseason stats at this point, but he's completing 65% or more of his passes, where Dobbs is in the 50s. He has not been completing passes. And then Rudolph may even be even better had some folks got their hands on the ball. He may even be up in the 70% range, which is, ungodly. And that's the reason he looks more sharp. I get it totally. I just, I feel right now like he's won this job. I have no problem with either of these guys, and this is where I'm going with this, Brian. We talked about this maybe 2-3 shows ago about Josh Dobbs' trade situation. This Andrew Luck thing comes up out of nowhere, complete shocker in the world of the NFL. Announces his retirement, 29 years old. Of course, the ink's not even dry on the paper yet. He barely gets the words out of his mouth, and everybody's like, look how this is going to benefit whatever team, particularly some of the other Steelers, people that are out there, sites and whatnot. They're already talking about that, and I'm kind of like, does it really matter if Andrew Luck, the Colts have been whipped by the Steelers before. That's not really that big a deal. Colts were on the rise last year. Nobody was giving them credit when they had Andrew Luck. So now all of a sudden, just because they lose a player, I get it, it's a franchise quarterback, but they've played with Jacoby Brissett for an entire season, and he's not new to this stuff either. But all of a sudden, everybody's discrediting Jacoby Brissett. They have some other guy named something something Walker, I think, that's on the roster, and then Chad Kelly, who's been bumping around. Those are, I think, the quarterbacks that they have currently on their depth chart. And then, of course, Luck was the fourth out of those others, and now he's gone. And Brissett has been a starter in the league and everything. Now everybody's like, trade Josh Dobbs. What in the heck are you going to get for Josh Dobbs that makes it more worth not having him on your own roster? He's at least been in a handful of snaps in the NFL. He's at least thrown a pass. He's at least had that type of pressure. We know he's, a rocket scientist genius. So he's got the smarts. He's got the intelligence. We've seen him have leadership. We've seen him have poise. He's not necessarily having the strongest preseason, but that doesn't mean I want to throw him out of town for a conditional 6th or 7th pick and rely on. And I really like Hodges. I'm not going to lie. I think Hodges is one of the, like I said, a different year. This guy's probably QB3. They really lucked out with the wealth, the amount of riches they have at this position right now this offseason. But I'm not really ready to rely on the undrafted guy. He put up a bunch. I like my FCS guys, okay? And my Penguins, they put the smackdown on, Hodges' old program, Samford, over the weekend in the big opener for week 0 of college football. How much sense does that make? About as much as the Skycam, right? And, so it's like you want a guy from that, for all intents and purposes, everybody always talks about, they even make fun of MAC players, for example, or Conference USA or something, which is still the main Division I football, but they're not playing against the SEC or ACC or Big Ten, and there's all this talk about this and needing some seasoning and stuff like that. Do you want to go down 2 quarterbacks? I want all 3 quarterbacks to be guys that have a pretty good ceiling to them. I think Rudolph's ceiling is a lot higher right now. I do believe we know who Josh Dobbs probably is, but it still doesn't mean he's not going to be a competent backup quarterback in the NFL. If that's all the better that he is, that still wins you some games. That was always my argument with Landry Jones. A lot of people still love Charlie Batch and don't realize, he was pretty much just an average, at times above average quarterback with a very good defense that was around him. But he went out there and he won games. He, if he made mistakes, they were able to overcome that. And if that's all the more that Josh Dobbs ends up being, I want him on the roster. I don't want to go to the unknown. Do I think Devlin Hodges could probably do something like that as well? Sure. But Devlin Hodges hasn't been in 3 training camps. He hasn't been with a pro football team for 2 seasons. And there's a lot to say about the veteran, experience that's there and what the Steelers would be able to get in return, even if the Colts were even looking or asking or picking up the phone, which I'm not sure that they are, because Jacoby Brissett is better at this point. He's better than Mason Rudolph or Josh Dobbs, just based on the fact that he's actually played in NFL games and thrown touchdown passes, et cetera, et cetera. So at the most, they're going to be looking for a backup quarterback, and it's like, what are you going to get for that, really? A lot of people call Dobbs a wasted pick, a 4th rounder, right? So now if you only get a 6th or 7th out of it, what are you really receiving? What does it hurt? Why are we bashing this guy? Let's just pick him up and let's keep him there and see what he does. We still have one more preseason game and we still have an entire season ahead of us, let alone if he sticks to this roster the following season afterward, to see really what he develops into.
Yeah, I think we got a lot of grief, or at least I got a lot of grief in some of the comments about picking on Mason Rudolph, or highlighting one bad throw and saying people taking that to interpret that I'm not encouraged by how Mason Rudolph has performed. I think I've said all along, I think that he is winning the number 2 position. And you hit it on the head. Unlike last season where Josh Dobbs, as you said, put his foot on the throat of the number 2 quarterback position and essentially forced your Landry Goat out of the league to some extent, and into the XFL. It's not been the same. I mean, even though Rudolph has played well at times, I don't think it's the same even as last year's Josh Dobbs. In other words, what Rudolph is doing this year is not the same thing as what Dobbs did last year. He's playing well. He's played well enough to probably earn the number 2 position, but he has not put his foot on the throat of that position and taken it as, this is mine, period. No story, no end of story. It's, he has had people see the touchdown and then and they think, okay, that's it, he's won. But at the same time, Josh Dobbs, we saw both sides of Josh Dobbs in that game last night. The catch to Trey Griffey where Tomlin finally wins a challenge on was one of the things Josh Dobbs can do for you that is exciting. He scrambles, he can use his legs to move around, and he's still looking down the field. Again, there's a play where I think 2 years ago Josh Dobbs just tries to run the ball. Relies on his legs. Now he's still looking down the field. That's good. That's progress. And then, he overthrows a 6'7" tight end.
On the very next play.
Yeah, the next play. So you've got the good and the bad of Josh Dobbs. His accuracy has not been great, and this has been commented on often, and it's correct. The problem is that his footwork is just not there, and whether that's because he's regressed and it hasn't been keeping up, or whether it's because he's scrambling a lot, not setting himself before he throws, moving around a lot because he's now playing behind the third string offensive line, and whether that's making a difference, I don't know. I just know he does not look the same as he did last year. But again, I like Josh Dobbs. I don't know that there's a good reason to get rid of Josh Dobbs, especially as you said, if what you're going to get for him is a 6th or 7th round pick. On the flip side of that, there was somebody out there in the Twitterverse that was prognosticating that because of the desperate need of the Colts, they could even get maybe a 2nd round. That's crazy talk. You're out of your mind. First of all, I think everybody is in panic mode with the Colts, thinking, "Oh, Andrew," and you're right, Jacoby Brissett. I don't know. Jacoby Brissett is not Andrew Luck, but he is a quarterback that's played in the league. I don't feel like the Colts are going to have to rush out to desperately find a new backup. Chad Kelly's played in the league. It's yes, they probably would like some more depth there, but. It is what it is. Look, it's this late in the preseason. I don't think they're going to be banging down teams' doors going, "Oh God, whatever you want, we'll give it to you. We got to have a quarterback." I think that's a ridiculous take on this. And the Steelers are not going to get a 2nd round pick for Josh Dobbs. You're not going to get a 2nd round pick for a guy who's throwing 52% completion percentages, for a guy who's throwing interceptions. You're not.
Well, let me add to that right there, Brian. It's like, and that's in the preseason. That's not in the regular season where, you're playing against the creme de la creme. So if he's doing this in the preseason, what value does that add for the Colts to want him as a regular season player, either in lieu of Brissett or if Brissett got hurt? I don't know.
Yeah, I just think it's not gonna. That's silliness is what it is. And I think it's an odd take. Anyway, the thing is, I think that the battle, we mentioned this in the pregame, if Mason Rudolph plays to back up Ben, I think that's an indication of where they stand. And I still think it is. I think Rudolph has almost certainly won the number 2 job. You will see them again, probably both of them in the 4th preseason game, and then we'll get probably a full half of Devlin Hodges in the second half of that game. But who knows? It could be flipped up anyway, 6 ways to Sunday. All we know is Ben's not playing in that game. But
did you have the same kind of nervousness last night as in every single player you saw that was a starter or main contributor? Get them off the game. Get them off the field. Get them out of the game. It was just
no.
There was a lot of that on Twitter, man. A lot.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Cam Hayward played most of the first half. Stephon Tuitt played a lot of time. Bush was in even late in the second quarter. And not that he's really penciled in as a starter yet, but there was a lot of starters, especially on defense, that played late into the game in the first half. And I don't think any of them were playing in the second half, but I was at no point was I like, yeah, it's scary, get him out, because there was a little more nervousness because of the rain, because it always, you never know, you get weird footing, you get weird traction, things can happen in the rain. But the Steelers seemed so in control of that game yesterday, and the defensive line, especially. I was never really overly concerned. I thought, yes, Ben. I figured once Ben scores, once they get a touchdown with the first team, they're going to be done, and it was clear that was going to be the end of that. And again, I think it's fine. Everybody's going, oh, it's great. I will maintain this in the third regular season game when everybody's complaining about a slow start. If they have that, I'm not, you never know, but if they do, I'm going to say, look, what do you expect? Those first few games are extension of the preseason. It is what it is. So we'll see how it goes. But no, it didn't freak me out.
And you see teams like losing players, like dropping like flies in some cases. It's always the unfortunate side effect to preseason. It's like, it's the double-edged sword, man. It's, damned if you do, damned if you don't, pretty much. If somebody plays and then they get hurt, it's like, oh, well, then if they don't play at all and, then everybody's like rusty. I don't know. There's not a good answer for any of that, to be completely honest. And, I just remembered something here, Brian, as we were bouncing back and forth and, disparaging the good name of Chris Collinsworth. I had somebody who sent me a message. I was trying to find their name. I think it was Mike. And if I don't get it right, I'm going to get admonished for this. So let me see if I can find it real quick. No, it wasn't Mike. Somebody sent me an email or a message somewhere. Oh, Dennis. It was Dennis. Mike was asking me some other thing about if the Steelers were the greatest team of all time. And of course, I just answered back with yes.
Yes.
Yes. Dennis sent something, and thank you for the comment too here, Dennis. He mentioned, you could always throw on the app or Steelers radio, and I'm like, and just mute the TV. And I know a lot of people that do that. I just get annoyed because I don't even like seeing too much of a movie trailer. So if the movie trailer reveals too much, I almost feel like I don't want to spend money to go see a movie. And, it just, and then when I get to that scene, I have my mind's almost like, my memory's like a steel trap. And it's just, I remember these things and then it's just like, well, that scene's not funny or good or anything else. It's, now I know what's going on. And sometimes I piece things together and I just hate it. And for me, sometimes the radio feed's ahead of TV.
Yes, it is.
It's like my cousin. He likes to text me like, boom, there it is, touchdown. And I'm like 2 plays behind because the Sunday Ticket, internet streaming the game live is like not really live. It's like 3 minutes behind everybody else in the world. You can't even look at the Twitterverse at that point or else then it's kind of like it takes the wind out of your sails. You're happy that they scored, but now you're just like watching, okay, that was a 1-yard run up the middle. Before the 40-yard touchdown bomb. So, but yeah, Dennis, obviously a great suggestion and something that, it'll be curious to see the comments from everyone else as to whether or not they do that too, because I know quite a few people do. I've always tried to do that, like bring a radio with me to like the games, but it doesn't work. It's hard to hear. If you have noise cancellation earphones, then you don't hear, then you're not part of the stadium atmosphere. You're like in between. So I'm usually at the worst case scenario playing on my phone when I need stats or I need to see something because I got to, I was looking at these punters yesterday and I was in the live feeds of just getting these stats. I'm like, that one punt was like 82 yards or something like that from Kern. And Jordan Berry was averaging, what did he finish with? He finished over 50. I had it here because, he was one of my studs too, believe it or not. I mean, we're talking punters, but I think Jordan Berry
averaged 50.
Was it 50 on 4?
On the dot.
Yeah, and a 56-yard long. I think he had one that went a little further, but that's kind of like, I think the composite with the return. There was one that Artie Burns got blasted on. Otherwise, it may have not even bounced in the end zone. It took a nice little hop, maybe about 5 yards out, and then tumble, and nobody was able to get to it. So as long as they have the coverage guys there, geez. I think he won that job. Speaking of jobs to be won, there aren't a whole lot. There aren't a whole lot of them, to be completely honest. Boswell didn't get to show us a whole lot, and Matthew Wright didn't either, to be completely honest. And I think it's Boz's job to lose when it comes to the special teams. We did see a new long snapper, so Trevor Wood actually came in as a tight end. And I believe he came in before Gentry in that game. I believe that's when the Skycam was down, and I could actually pick out numbers because I couldn't tell 88 from 83 and 80, or 30 and 38 and 33. And I'm like, is that Samuels? Is that Connor? Is it Trey Edmonds? I have no idea who's out there. I could see there's it might be a 3, maybe it's an 8. I don't know. I don't have a whole lot else to talk about offense. I mean, you brought up Vance McDonald. There's not a whole lot to talk about. With the wide receivers that we hadn't already. I just think that somebody who maybe made more of a case for themselves in this game was Deontay Spencer, and somebody who didn't was Johnny Holton. Holton didn't come down with that one ball in bounds. You got to make that play. Rudolph puts the ball right on him. I believe he had a penalty in another spot and maybe something else that just, it was in such a tight competition there, and when you're even looking at players maybe for practice squad and a guy who's been a veteran and been around, and unless he's done stuff otherwise in practices that may indicate otherwise, I don't know. I think Spencer's the one that's really maybe fighting tooth and nail for a spot here, and it's going to be very tough since they're 6 deep on the receivers as it is, if they were to even keep 6. That's about the only other position battles I could really see fleshing out. I think Matt Filer has won the right tackles. Oh, that's the other thing Collinsworth blew. This is a big change, a big question mark. No, it wasn't. Matt Filer started 10 games last year for Marcus Gilbert. Marcus Gilbert, we talk about best ability being availability, and he wasn't available. And we found out what Matt Filer was, and I know the Steelers are trying to upgrade maybe at the position and maybe put Chuck Sikora or Gerald Hawkins, one of these guys that they invested a draft pick in and had some type of draft pedigree, which usually means what? They grade out as better athletes at the combine and things in shorts, so you think they may have more upside than the undrafted guy like Matt Filer. And Matt Filer, admittedly, another guy like Chris Hubbard, who was a guard and moved over to tackle and has found some success. But it's not like it's this big dramatic change. He has 10 starts, so he's cohesive with those other men that are on the offensive line, so I thought that was a little silly too. Any other closing thoughts for the offense? Because we do have to get to that defensive side of the football.
Yeah, I want to. I kind of agree with you that Deontay Spencer is trying to make his case. I mean, he had a nice what was it, an end around?
Yeah, he has the vision.
Game. Yeah, but I don't think that that's going to get him anywhere. He needed to make his case in special teams on punt returns, kick returns, and while he had some nice returns earlier in the game, I think I said even after the first preseason game, he's got to take one to the house for him to etch his way on the squad, and that just hasn't happened. He's still got another preseason game to try and make his case, but it's going to be really tough for them to keep just a return specialist because that's what he would end up being. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I don't think I have much else. I think, as we said, I think we've covered the offense pretty good.
Yeah, and then the defense looks. This was my exact comment. I think on Twitter, I was like, "Buckle up," because this is what we're going to see in the regular season. It was pretty much the preview. Mark Barron and Devin Bush, I believe, unless my Skycam eyes. I think you wear glasses, right, Brian? So, for me, I'm a 20/20 vision guy, and I still couldn't figure out who the heck was on the field. And then they penalized Terrell Edmonds instead of Barron. I know it was clearly Barron. It was the one time I actually could see 2-6 on the jersey, and they penalized Edmonds, and then they zoom in on Edmonds, and Edmonds just has this bewildered look on his face. Wrong guy with the long hair, it's just he got the wrong one. So anyway, and then there was while we're on the refs stink, Tomlin got the one challenge, right? And then there was another play where there was a huddle and they tried to penalize, was it a 59, and the Steelers don't have a 59 on the roster? And then they figured out.
They're driving me. I mean, look, the refs stink. They stink, but they stunk less last night than they normally stink, except for a couple of blatant problems. First of all, not calling a 3-footed reception, which is what Trey Griffey has, calling that an incomplete pass. You're out of your gourd. Pay attention. Get your eyes in the game. And the second one, the more blatant one, I don't know who to call this penalty on. Oh, we're going to call it on the Steelers. Wait, no, it was on the Titans. I don't know. Let's just toss a coin. I don't know. They stink.
Well, you can't review some of these things, so that's yeah. I mean, I had to give my jabs were due because I get it's preseason, but now it's the third week of the preseason, and not everyone that's doing this sort of deal as an NFL referee, it's not like they're all like new to this. You just don't walk in and start officiating football. You had to have come from somewhere and had some type of experience and known someone in order to be recommended to get into that position, and then work your way up and actually work, get assignments and work games. So it's like, I don't understand it. Maybe they were watching from the sky cam too. I don't know. I'm probably going to get some, hate mail on the Skycam thing, but I think most people are going to agree with me. It was just so overused, and it made it difficult to watch some things. But the one thing we were able to pick out is that the Steelers' defense looked pretty glorious, and these guys swiping at the ball, trying to make splash plays, 7 sacks. Now, I didn't see any love. There was a lot of people fawning over the other night when it was Tampa Bay's line up against, Myles Garrett. I'm bringing it up again, this Browns stuff, and I'm going to keep bringing it up until they finally play, and then we get to see some. And I think the first time they play, too, is the Steelers are at the disadvantage on the road at Thursday night, too, so I can't even get to gloat maybe until the second game. But, Myles Garrett, Olivier Vernon, Sheldon Richardson, and I'm trying to think of the other guy. Is it Ogunjobi? I don't remember for which one they had. I forget which one left and which one stayed. But anyways, they were like, good luck stopping this front four. And I was like, well, where's the stuff at here? Where's the love for Stephon Tuitt? This guy comes out, gets a safety. Bud Dupree was there too, by the way. I think Bud would have got to him if Stephon didn't. And then Stephon manhandles someone again and gets a killer sack. We saw Vince Williams murder someone. We were even seeing some of the guys. We'll talk about some of the reserves here in a second too. But the front line starters: Cam Hayward, grown ass man; Stephon Tuitt, grown ass man. I think they're all grown ass men this week. Devin Bush still looks as good as advertised, and I'm even going to say Artie Burns. Someone tried to say Artie Burns got burnt, and I'm like, where? I'm like, okay, so which of the Browns is it? This is the A.J. Brown. He made a nice little cut there, and I mean, this guy's on a wet turf, Artie Brown's, and tries to stop on a diamond, and still makes the play anyways. I get the guy caught the ball, but these are professional football players. You're going to win some, you're going to lose some. It's a chess match, and for the most part, there was a play where Artie Burns stands up whoever it was that ends up getting the ball, and he's in the process of making the tackle, and it's not like he got beat or the guy ends up breaking the tackle, and as the guy's trying to fend off Burns is holding him in a position where Cam Kelly comes in and knocks the ball free, and I don't think they came away with it just there. But come on, man, give this guy some credit. I thought that was a pretty good play. You didn't hear Burns' name hardly at all the entire night. You didn't really hear anything from much of the safeties. We do maybe have a concern with Sean Davis, but I don't know how serious it is. Didn't look like it was very serious, but we shall see, because they're a little. That's one of the positions where they're a little razor thin there as far as their depth. Everywhere else they're kind of loaded. And Steven Nelson, holy cow, Steven Nelson. Folks, you thought we were on his jock. Go back and watch this preseason game. This guy is all over everyone. He knocks the ball away once or twice. I don't know what else. You complain about one guy in Artie Burns. You can't complain about this other guy just yet, okay? He's shown nothing but being a solid corner, and it's exactly what the Steelers needed. I think everybody would be ecstatic if they would have signed him and they didn't already have Joe Hayden, and this is going to be their number one guy, and there's like a spotlight on him. But he's kind of under the radar, and I don't think anybody's really talking about just how good of a preseason he's had as well. I think entirely. You add Barron, you add all these other things, T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree and just everything else, all these moving pieces. The Steelers' defense is fast. We saw a dime package where Hilton came off. It was something like what? Nelson, Burns, there was 3 safeties and 3 DBs. So Cam Sutton came on. He was the third corner. And then it was Davis Edmonds and Cam Kelly. And that was the defense that they had out there. We saw, nice stops on third down, stopping people short of the marker. That was Sean Davis. I mean, these are some really, really telling plays where, in past years, it's like, well, just don't worry. It's the preseason. They'll get this together eventually, and then maybe they do or don't. You know what I mean? These guys look sharp. They're flying to the ball. They're making plays, and it has me incredibly excited. And I think this is really, all the talk about losing AB and losing Bell with the offense. This defense is really flying under the radar. They've led the league in sacks each of the last 2 years. I think not only can they do it again, I think the turnover ratio is finally going to go in their favor. They start getting the ball and putting it in the offense's hands. They're not going to have a whole lot to worry about. The defense is very promising.
Yeah, I'm really encouraged by the defense. I wished I was live so I could just say Cam Hayward is a grown ass man multiple times. But as you said, there were a lot of grown ass men performances on that defense. Stephon Tuitt, at one point, T.J. Watt was channeling his inner grown ass man. With shedding a double team block to get to a running back on a wide run play. I thought. Overall, Steven Nelson looked really good. I'll be excited to see him and Joe Hayden paired up and playing. I think this is a even Chris Collingsworth, notoriously not on the Steelers jock usually, was chiming in about how this defense is younger and faster, and it really is. I thought. It's interesting to watch how they chose to disperse the multiple go-go gadget parts that they have for this defense. With all the hybrid players that they've got in that linebacker group and secondary. They played a lot of 3 safety stuff in the nickel. I thought, it looked really good. The first team defense. I mean, at one point early in the second quarter, I think even the Titans only had they had -9 yards, -9.
Yeah.
And this was, look, they played the Titans starting offense and they did nothing. That's good. That's a good sign. And whether you think Marcus Mariota should be their starter or Ryan Tannehill didn't do jack either. It wasn't until the starters got out of there and the second team started to come in and Logan Woodside or whatever his name is.
Yeah, Logan Woodside.
Started to move the ball a little bit against, second team and third team players that the Titans made any kind of hay. And even then they couldn't get in the end zone. 2 field goals is all they netted for the game. There's not much I can pick out as negative about the defensive performance. I really can't find myself a true dud there. The worst thing I can say is Bud hurt his thumb, apparently. And that hopefully is not anything serious because, again, Bud put on a strong performance. I don't think he got it. Did he get a sack?
He did not officially get credited for one. I think it went to Tuitt and both. I don't even think he got the half sack. I'm looking at it right now, and of course, there's like 80 bazillion people who played on defense. So give me a second here, and Noah, you know what? I don't even think he's on the sheet, even for like a tackle, to be completely honest. But that doesn't mean that his presence wasn't felt or he didn't, collapse the pocket and help someone else. Everybody's head's on a swivel, and it's like, am I watching this guy? Am I watching this guy? And he's part of the team, and he helps free up guys like Tuitt and Hayward to make these plays.
Absolutely. I mean, T.J. Watt didn't get any sacks either. Does that mean he's terrible? No. So,
well, he is on the stat sheet. He did get 2 tackles, but
right, but no sacks.
No sacks, no pass deflections, anything like that. I mean, you had Well, 7 sacks. I mean, there's a couple other guys. I mean, Robert Spillane, pretty much put somebody 6 feet under later in that game. Whew. And Vince Williams, who I wasn't expecting to see play at all, but he did end up coming in. And I don't even know how much he played because of the stupid spy cam. No, those are in New England. That's what they'll be. That's what they'll be using. And that game's on NBC too, so we'll hear Collinsworth. This will be a complete flip in about 2 weeks when he fawns over Tom Brady, his crush, I should say, his man crush.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to think of what else there is to say here because the defense was just so good. It's hard to pick out any individual performances. I think Ulysses Gilbert, I don't want to say Grant, the president or the governor. Well, the governor was CSW. Never mind. Ulysses Gilbert, once again, looking strong. He came in there pretty early. I think he's won a job. I think the guy, we're going to be talking about this in the middle of the week, folks, just as a programming note. I mean, it really isn't much of a preview for the Panthers game. It's going to be pretty much whose job's on the line. And I think Matakevich is hanging in the balance there. We finally got to see Sutton Smith, but really, late in the game and didn't, that's indicative of him not being available and practicing and things of that nature too. So he just doesn't jump into the lineup. The guys that jump into the lineup are the ones who've been doing well and they need to see more of. Tazar Skipper, for example, who
there you go.
He's this year's.
I wanted to call out.
Yeah, you go ahead, call him out. I think he's this year's Ola.
Yeah, I think. Look, the Steelers are going to have a really hard time deciding which linebackers to keep. Tazar Skipper and Ulysses Gilbert both have, admittedly against primarily JV opponents, but at some point you go, okay, I got to see what we got here because he's not just playing well, he's dominating against these guys, and he needs his chance. Skipper was, continues his tear through the preseason. If you want to call him the preseason phenom or the stud of the preseason, I don't know what term you want to. I don't want to call him a camp phenom because camp's basically over. And it wasn't really until the game started that people really started to notice him. But again, he had a strip sack last night again for another sack. Made several tackles. Just looked good in his pass rush and in his situation. Gilbert was good moving across sideline to sideline and doing what he does. I think that they're gonna have. I don't want to throw the GAM out on these guys yet because again the level of competition is a little different, but it's very encouraging and it's going to make Mike Tomlin's job a little more difficult when it comes time to decide who goes where. Because can they keep 10 linebackers? I mean, I know Bill Cowher used to keep 10 linebackers, but they got a lot of positions to cover here. And I don't know that they're going to have the ability to keep 10 linebackers on this squad, but that means who do you let go? As you said, and we said almost at the beginning that Matakevich might be pushed in this preseason. But I will give Dirty Red some credit. Dirty Red has had a solid preseason. He's made some plays. He is a special teams guy, a core special teamer, and that's important because that's where these guys were likely going to make their bones if they make the roster. So it'll be interesting to see. You mentioned Sutton Smith, and that's about the only mention he got during that game. Was you mentioning him that he was there because he needed, because he missed so much time, he needed to distinguish himself, and he did not. He didn't make any bonehead plays either. There was no, he didn't get called out on the wrong side of it, but when you miss the first 2 preseason games, and I would expect, provided that he's still healthy, that we're going to see him a lot in the 4th preseason game. But he's got a tough road to hoe now because he's well behind, guys like Skipper and Gilbert. It feels very unlikely that he's anything but practice squad eligible at this point. And I don't think you give up on a guy yet, but that's probably the best he can hope for because you just haven't had a chance to see anything from him.
Well, I do have something surprising out of that game, and you're talking about not showing anything, but then again, not making any mistakes. Quiet, right? Except for, like I said, with Steven Nelson, same thing. Sutton Smith played 85% of the game yesterday. By far the most of anyone. Cam Kelly was second with 63. So Marcus Allen, who we should definitely give a nod to here as well. Very good pass breakup in coverage. And was he the one who punched the ball out somewhere as well? Forced a fumble, I think. I don't know if my memory is serving me correctly now.
No, that was the safety. The other safety.
We said Cam Kelly. We said Cam Kelly earlier. I thought Marcus Allen may have made some other play in the game, but anyways, I thought Marcus Allen definitely made a case, as he's had a very quiet summer overall, practice, games, otherwise. Justin Lane, he's had some bumps and bruises. It's been a learning experience for him so far. There's definitely promise there, but so that, this is where you start to mold the roster, and we'll talk about this a little more. They have a lot of DBs, but most of those DBs are corners, not as much with safeties. Who's injured, who's not. If you enter the season and let's say Sean Davis is unavailable, you probably have to have another safety on the roster or somebody that can. And I know they've been working out like Cam Sutton and Mike Hilton in those type of roles as well, as probably emergency type basis or for some type of sub package look or scheme or something. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. It's just Sutton Smith. We'll see. I mean, it was tough to begin with. They went into with 9 draft picks or whatever, and it's like we knew there weren't 9 spots. I think they ended up with 8 overall picks, after they traded the one for Devin Bush. So it's like we still didn't think there were 8 spots on this roster to begin with, and it makes it very difficult because we pretty much liked everyone that's been drafted. I don't know. We'll have to get into that a little bit more, in the next episode because we're up against it here, and this would drag it out to 3 hours probably, as much as we could talk about that. But it's one of those things where I think we saw a lot of great stuff. I did see Dan McCullers absolutely abuse someone again, and that's nice to see too. But he's not Javon Hargrave's replacement. No. So I'm just trying to go through a few more of the names here. I don't know. There really wasn't anything negative to say about anybody on the defense whatsoever. And just a few points that we had was if Dobbs turns 1 or 2 of those plays around, we're not talking about him either. We may not have anything to talk about as in the negative except the referees and the sky cam. I mean, it was just that good of a showing by the Steelers Sunday night.
Yeah. The one negative that I have for this game has more to do with somebody who didn't play, and that's Benny Snell.
Yeah.
Benny Snell didn't play. When asked about it, Tom was asked whether he and Deontay Johnson, and I think I've got the Johnsons or the Deontays in the right place this week.
Yeah.
Didn't play because they had some they didn't participate in practices because of injury or whatnot. And he was very emphatic in saying these guys need practice time in order to be ready for game time. And at this point, with what we saw from Trey Edmonds last night as a running back coming in, picking up some short yardage, having a couple nice runs. And in comparison, look, I don't want to be down on Benny Snell, but I think Benny Snell is hanging by his fingernails. Maybe he's clutching on to a potential third. It's no guarantee that he's going to be the third running back at this point. He has been somewhat underwhelming when he's been in, and missing the third preseason game is tough. So that's a guy that I expected more out of, and we'll have to see what happens. But there's a guy you need to watch in that 4th preseason game. Not to jump ahead, but because this was a negative. If there's a negative to take out of this game, it's the fact that Benny Snell didn't play, and that Trey Edmonds, on the plus side, had some quality time.
Yeah, I agree with that too. It was disappointing to see his name not called, and for whatever reasons that might be, I don't see that he was going to get a whole lot of snaps to begin with, and I really do think that Jalen Samuels, the way he's been used now in the preseason, the way I've seen some of the different looks that the team has put together in training camp and whatnot, I think we could expect to see him on the field maybe a little more this year. I'm still thinking, 15, 20% of the snaps, but that definitely takes away from any opportunity for Snell to get out there, barring any injury to anyone higher up on the depth chart. And, Trey Edmonds has looked more impressive at this point too. Here's another thing. He's been there and done that. He made the active roster the final week. He's been in with the practice squad. He's somebody that's going to hang around. He's going to be a thorn in the side and somebody that you're really going to have to shake off and win this job. And Snell has shown, he's flashed, definitely. The Friday Night Lights thing with him and Devin Bush was just spectacular to watch, both of those guys not back down whatsoever. But we haven't seen Snell really turn the light on yet in the preseason. And those first two games, and for whatever reason, you got a mismatch of offensive linemen or whatever. So I was really hoping we would have saw like 2 or 3 carries with the main level talent there, the starters at the offensive line, to see what Snell could have done. And that opportunity's been missed, and that opportunity will not be realized in the 4th preseason game. You're not going to see Pouncey. I doubt you're going to see. I'll probably end up being wrong, but I doubt the Castro or Villanueva. I mean, there's more of a chance that one of those guys may actually sneak in there and play like a couple snaps or something like that. I don't know that it's likely, but they're definitely not going to have Pouncey, and that's already a big difference. When they highlighted one of the plays yesterday where Pouncey gets to the second level immediately. Those are the things Marquise Pouncey does that nobody else really can offer you, unfortunately. As much as like BJ Finney or anybody else like that, Marquise Pouncey is one of the best in the league, and that's one of the reasons why. So, and that type of level of play, that type of performance, that benefits guys like James Conner, Jalen Samuels, Benny Snell, et cetera, would help Snell make some noise, so to speak. So, Brian, we're up against it, buddy, but, thanks once again for joining me today, and any closing notes for our listeners out there?
The refs stink. Chris Collinsworth stinks. Skycam stinks.
Tom Brady stinks.
I'm not saying that yet. Hopefully I can say that after the game. I'm an old man yelling at the clouds, but it was a good, solid game, and I look forward to the season starting and seeing what this defense really is going to do, because it was really encouraging.
Oh, yeah, encouraging beyond. And, I mean, even the offense, even getting that moving a little bit. We still, it took forever. This was my closing note. Just the one play. In fact, even the one with Mason Rudolph to James Washington, I'll throw in there too. But Ben to Juju, they made it look so easy. That's what we've been seeing all summer, and it is going to be electric once you see a little more. Juju quietly picked up 4 catches, even though he missed the one, but things happen. So anyways, Brian, thanks once again for joining me today. For all of our listeners out there, thank you for supporting us, supporting the show. We'll be back boomeranging right back around real soon here in a couple days, since there is a Thursday game this week. But that is par for the course. All teams are playing their final game this Thursday and getting it out of the way. So we'll be covering, who's on the hot seat when it comes to who has to show us something, not show me the money, but show us something, because it's the not for long league, unfortunately, as we wind down this preseason. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Joe Kuzma. His name is Brian E. Roach. Until next time, we encourage all of our listeners to be safe, be good, and we will catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.